I'm Emily Sanders, 36 years old, and for most of my life, I've been the one who shows up early, brings the extra wine, and never asks for anything in return. When my dad turned 65, I booked the dinner, paid the deposit, and wrapped his gift in navy paper. I even wore the heels that always give me blisters. But when I arrived at the restaurant that night, all 15 seats at the main table were already taken. My sister pointed to a folding chair near the trash bin and said, "This table's for family only." And just like that, I knew something in me had changed. Before I go any further, let me know where you're listening from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family. I grew up in a quiet suburb outside Indianapolis. My parents were the kind of people who believed in hard work and saying thank you even if no one heard you. We weren't wealthy, but we had clean floors, packed lunches, and rules about speaking kindly. My mom worked as a nurse. My dad was a mail carrier, and our house always smelled like something was cooking, usually something with potatoes. There were just two of us, me and my older sister Vanessa. She was the loud one, the one with the big laugh and the natural charm. Vanessa could walk into a room and have everyone leaning in within 5 minutes. I was quieter. I got straight A's helped out without being asked, and always returned the library books on time. I didn't mind the background, not at first. I thought love didn't need a spotlight. As we got older, the contrast deepened. Vanessa was the one they asked to give the toast at Thanksgiving. I was the one they asked to pass the gravy. When her high school photo went up in the hallway frame, mine never made it out of the envelope. I told myself it didn't matter. I went off to college 3 states away and eventually started my own little marketing firm out of St. Louis. I sent birthday cards. I paid for things when emergencies came up, an engine repair, a dental bill, never expecting to be thanked. And still I kept showing up. Because part of me believed that if I just did enough, gave enough, maybe they'd finally see me as more than the one who filled in the gaps. So when Mom called a few weeks before Dad's birthday dinner, her voice extra sweet, I already knew what was coming. "We'd love for you to come," she said. "It's going to be really special." Then she added, "We were wondering if you could put down the deposit, just to hold the reservation. It's at Rose Ember. You know the place Dad loves. I sent the money that afternoon. $1,000. No one said thank you. I asked who was coming. Mom replied, "Just family." That word used to mean something. The night of the dinner, I arrived early like always. I had my coat still on, gift in hand, ready to make things nice. The restaurant was soft lit and quiet, the kind of place where the menu didn't list prices. The hostess smiled when I gave my name and walked me upstairs to the private room. And that's when I saw it. 15 people seated around a polished mahogany table. My parents' cousins Vanessa, in a cream dress that probably cost more than my week's groceries. They were laughing, passing champagne. My dad looked happier than I'd seen him in years, and not a single person looked up when I walked in. Then Vanessa turned wine glass in hand. "Emily," she said, all smiles. "Glad you made it." She tilted her head and pointed toward a lone fold-out chair by the wall. "Sorry, this table's for family only, but we set you up just over there." I stood there for a moment, coat still buttoned, gift still in my hand. Someone chuckled. I think it was Uncle Mark. No one said a word in my defense. That was the moment I stopped pretending. But I didn't know yet that the silence at that table was about to cost them far more than they expected. I walked to the fold-out chair without saying a word. It was tucked against the wall near a bus cart, right beside a trash bin that smelled faintly of lemon and old shrimp. My coat stayed on. I placed the gift for my dad on the floor by my feet and folded my hands in my lap. My heels were already pinching, but I didn't move. Across the room, the real table glowed under soft chandeliers. 15 seats, cloth napkins, champagne already poured. Laughter drifted over like music from a party I hadn't been invited to. No one looked over. Vanessa was mid-story something about Dad's new golf clubs. My mom nodded, dabbing her eyes. My dad looked happy, really happy. I told myself to sit still, to not cry, to not let this be a scene. I didn't want a scene. I just wanted a place. A waiter approached. He looked young, maybe early 20s, and a little unsure. "Are you with the R?" He paused and glanced at the big table. "Are you part of the birthday party?" I nodded. He didn't say anything else, just set down a glass of water and walked away. I sat there like that for 2 hours. Nobody asked if I wanted to order. Nobody checked if I was okay. I could hear Vanessa's voice rising and falling over the clink of silverware. She gave a toast. Everyone laughed at something my cousin told. My dad beamed as he unwrapped a framed photo won from a family trip to Cape Cod. I wasn't in it. I remember staring at the folds of the linen tablecloth, trying not to count how many people glanced my way. I heard someone say, "Ouch," under their breath after Vanessa told me where to sit. I think it was Uncle Mark, or maybe my mom, but no one said anything to me directly, not once. Then just as the waiter began clearing dessert plates, he returned this time with a sleek black folder in hand. I could see the total inside from where I sat, nearly $5,000. He looked down at the folder, then back toward the main table. No one reached for it. He turned, scanning the room until his eyes met mine. He walked toward me slowly, like he wasn't sure if he had the right person. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, voice low. "The total for the evening is $4,912. Should I run it on the card used for the deposit?" The room went silent. Vanessa froze mid-sip. My mom's jaw tightened. My dad shifted in his seat and cleared his throat. I looked up at the waiter and gave a small smile. "Not my table," I said. He blinked. "I'm sorry," I spoke a little louder. "I paid the deposit, yes, but I was told this table was for family only." The quiet that followed wasn't just awkward. It was sharp. You could feel it press against the edges of the room. Someone made a sound, a gasp maybe. Aunt Karen or possibly Jenna. I didn't look to check. I kept my eyes on the waiter. Vanessa hissed Emily. "Oh my God, don't do this. I'm not doing anything I said. I'm just following the seating plan." Dad leaned forward. "Emily, honey, come on, you already paid half. Might as well just settle it." That stopped me. That one sentence. Might as well. I stood slowly. The chair scraped loudly behind me, the kind of sound that draws every eye in the room. I picked up my coat and reached for the small navy gift box. Then I looked around the table, really looked. I did pay the deposit, I said. I made the reservation. I handled the florist and the car for Mom, and I gave up my weekend for this. My eyes landed on Vanessa, and for that, I got a folding chair next to a trash can. I let the silence stretch for a breath longer. "So now," I said, "you all get to figure out the rest." And I walked out. The waiter still held the folder frozen in place. I passed him without looking back. I didn't take the elevator. I needed air. My heels clicked down every marble stair like they were counting for me. Outside, the cold air rushed up against me, sharp and honest. By the time I reached the sidewalk, I had unfastened my coat and removed my earrings. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but something clearer, something final. I walked the 10 blocks home without stopping. My phone buzzed before I even reached my door. First, it was Mom, then Vanessa, then Dad, one after another. "Emily, please call me. Seriously, you had to make it about you again. That was uncalled for. You embarrassed everyone." I didn't answer. I poured a glass of water, took off my shoes, sat down at the edge of the couch, and just stared at the untouched gift still resting in my purse. Then at 10:01 p.m., my phone lit up again, a name I hadn't expected. Madison, Vanessa's ex-girlfriend. I answered. "Emily," she asked, a little unsure. "Yeah." "Hi. I hope it's okay," I called. I was there. At the dinner. I blinked. What I came with, Claire. Vanessa told everyone I was a friend from yoga. I didn't know what to say. What happened after I left, I asked. She tried to play it off like it was the waiter's fault, or yours, said you were being sensitive. But the look on her face, she knew that you didn't yell. You didn't cause a scene. You just walked out and it shook her. I stayed quiet. "I'm not calling to stir anything up," Madison said. "I just wanted you to know I saw it. I've always seen it. Seen the way they treat you, like you're the safety net, the one who always picks up the pieces." I exhaled slowly. "Why now?" I asked. "Why tell me this?" "Because you finally left," she said, "and none of them saw that coming." That was the last thing she said before we hung up. I sat in my kitchen for a long time after that, the wine bottle still unopened on the counter, the gift still in my purse. But something was different now. Because I could have brought gold to that dinner and it wouldn't have mattered. I'd still be seated next to the trash. Only this time I didn't stay. And apparently I wasn't the only one who noticed. The next morning, the family group chat was already buzzing before I'd even made coffee. A string of messages lit up my phone one after another, like someone had flipped a switch. Mom had written first. "Emily, we really need to talk. You hurt your father. Please call." Dad's followed a few minutes later. "Let's not make this bigger than it needs to be. Just apologize and we move on." Then Vanessa chimed in. "You humiliated me in front of everyone. I hope it was worth it." I didn't respond, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because for once I didn't feel like fixing anything. I'd said what I needed to say the night before, and the silence that followed was louder than any reply I could give. By early afternoon, my phone buzzed again. It was a voice note from Vanessa. I stared at it for a second before pressing play. Her tone was clipped sarcastic and tight around the edges. "I hope you're happy. You made Dad's birthday all about you. You always play the victim, Emily. Maybe if you weren't so cold, people would actually want you at the table." I listened to it once. Then again. Not because I was surprised, but because something about the way she said it, like I should feel ashamed for leaving a table I was never welcome at, sat differently now. I opened my laptop, pulled up the restaurant email, and began sorting through receipts. There was the $1,000 deposit I'd paid 3 weeks before, the $350 florist invoice for the centerpieces Mom wanted, the framed golf print I'd custom ordered for Dad, $180, and the town car service I booked for Mom so she wouldn't have to deal with downtown parking, $120. I attached them all to a new email, added everyone in the family group to BCC, and typed, "Subject R.E. Last night. Hi all, since there seems to be confusion about my intentions, I thought it might help to clarify with facts. Attached are the receipts for the dinner deposit floral arrangements, Dad's gift, and the transportation service for Mom. All of this was charged to my card. No one offered to reimburse me, nor did I ask. I did it because I was told this dinner was about honoring Dad, but I was also told quite clearly that I wasn't considered part of the family that night. I won't be covering the remaining $4, $9, $12. I didn't eat, I wasn't seated, I wasn't welcome, and frankly, I'm tired of paying for rooms that won't even offer me a chair. Best Emily, I hit send. The responses came quickly. The first was from my cousin Jenna. Good for you. We saw what happened. It was cruel. Then Uncle Leo. Wish I'd had the guts to speak up. I'm sorry. Even Aunt Karen, who normally said nothing, unless it was wrapped in polite judgment, sent a short reply. About time someone said it. I sat back in my chair and read them twice. But what stood out more was what didn't come. There was no apology from Mom, nothing from Dad. Vanessa went silent. Until 2 hours later, A new message popped up from an unknown number. "Hi, this is Claire Madison's friend. We met once at Jenna's wedding. I just wanted to say, that email, it's making the rounds. People are talking, and this time they're not on Vanessa's side." I stared at the screen for a long moment, then slowly leaned back, letting the quiet of my apartment settle in. For years I had poured myself into people who only reached out when they needed something. Covered bills, filled in gaps, sent gifts that got no reply. And now the tide was shifting, and I wasn't chasing it anymore. I opened my banking app and pulled up the shared emergency fund account. I'd kept it quiet for years, just under $30,000 tucked away for family moments that always seemed to turn into emergencies. Vanessa's car repairs, Dad's dental work, Mom's just until the refund comes through moments. They never asked kindly. They just assumed I'd handle it. I hovered over the transfer button, then moved the entire amount into my personal savings and closed the joint account. It felt quiet, like a door closing with the soft click of finality. 10 minutes later, Vanessa called. I didn't answer. She called again and again. On the fourth try, I picked up. "What the hell, Emily?" she snapped. "The joint fund is gone. I just tried to pay my car note." "I closed it," I said. "You what? You can't just, I can." "And I did." She went silent. I paid for the dinner, the flowers, the transportation. I sat alone, got laughed at, and then was expected to foot the rest of the bill while being told I wasn't even family. I said steady. "That account was the last tie. It's gone now. You're being vindictive." "No," I said. "I'm being done." Vanessa didn't speak for a while. When she did, her voice cracked not with apology, but confusion. "You've never talked to me like this before. I used to think I had to earn love by staying quiet," I said. "But love that only exists when I'm convenient isn't love." I ended the call and set the phone face down on the counter. Later that evening, I opened the Notes app on my phone and started listing everything I was finished doing, covering last-minute bills, driving across state lines for holidays, sending birthday gifts that no one acknowledged, smiling through silence, acting like it didn't matter. It was a longer list than I expected, and for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about a single thing on it. Before bed, another message came in. It was Madison. "You okay?" I heard Vanessa's spiraling, accusing everyone of siding against her. I typed back slowly. "Me. Let her spiral. I'm not her axis anymore." I turned off my phone. The apartment was still the kind of stillness that didn't ache. I made tea, sat at the edge of my bed, and watched the steam curl from the mug. Tomorrow could be quiet too, and that I realized was its own kind of freedom. The morning after I closed the joint account, I didn't check my phone right away. I let the sun creep through the blinds without rushing to meet it. For the first time in years, there wasn't anything I felt obligated to respond to. I made a slow breakfast, poured coffee into my favorite chipped mug, and stood by the window just breathing. By mid-morning, I opened my laptop to catch up on work, but instead found myself back at the inbox where I'd sent that family email. It was quiet now. No new replies, no follow-up apologies, nothing from Mom, nothing from Dad. And then just as I was about to close the tab, a new message slid in. Subject: Emily. I owe you an apology. It was from Dad. I stared at it for a long time before clicking. The email was short. There was no small talk, no attempt to soften the edges. Just I didn't see it. That's on me. Your sister has always taken up all the air in the room, and you just made it easy for us to ignore that. I'm sorry. If you ever want to talk, I'll listen. No excuses, Dad. I didn't cry. I didn't respond right away either. But something shifted. After all these years, he didn't ask me to fix anything. He didn't defend anyone or make it my job to smooth things over. He just said he was wrong. And maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of something different. In the days that followed, The family group chat went quiet again. No messages, no check-ins, no passive-aggressive reminders about birthdays or gatherings. And instead of feeling shut out, I felt calm. The silence wasn't cold this time. It was peaceful. I stopped checking my phone the moment I woke up. I deleted calendar alerts for holidays I no longer felt compelled to attend. I started cooking dinner for one, something warm, slow, and simple. I lit candles while I worked. I took long walks in the evening without announcing where I was going. And then one day, I booked the trip to Santa Fe. I had postponed it twice already, once for Vanessa's last-minute bridal shower, and again for my parents' anniversary party. But now, there was no one expecting me to show up, no obligations I couldn't break. I flew out on a Tuesday. My hotel room was small, but filled with light. On the first morning, I wrapped myself in a cardigan and walked the downtown plaza alone. The sidewalks were still damp from a light rain, and the smell of roasting chilies drifted through the breeze. I bought a cup of black coffee from a corner cart and sat near the art market watching vendors arrange pottery textiles and handmade jewelry on folding tables. I didn't take photos right away. I just sat. At one of the booths, an older woman handed me a smooth stone carved with a spiral. She said it was a symbol for life, unfolding quietly and steadily. I bought it and slipped it into my coat pocket without saying much. That evening, I took out a journal I hadn't opened in months. I started a new page titled, "Things I Thought I Needed Permission For." I wrote slowly, saying no without guilt, choosing peace over obligation, cutting ties that only tighten when you struggle, creating a life that doesn't revolve around making others comfortable. The list was short at first, but by the next day it had grown to 2 full pages. Each morning I'd take my coffee to the same bench and add another line. On day 3, I opened the photo gallery on my phone to clear out old screenshots. That's when I saw it, a picture from the birthday dinner. I hadn't taken it. It must have been posted by someone else and saved to the family thread. The main table was there, candles glowing, people smiling, glasses raised. And in the background, almost out of frame, was me, still in my coat, still seated near the trash can. The image didn't sting the way I thought it would. Instead, it settled something. Quietly. That version of me had still shown up, still brought a gift, still believed she could earn her place by giving more. But she was gone now. And in her place stood someone who no longer needed to ask for a seat. The following week, I invited 6 friends over for dinner. Just 6. No aunts, no cousins, no one who expected anything from me but my company. We ate lemon-roasted chicken and passed around mismatched cloth napkins. Someone brought wine. Someone else brought homemade cookies. Nobody asked where to sit. There wasn't a seating chart. There didn't need to be one. Halfway through the meal, my friend Talia raised her glass and said, "To Emily for reminding us that family doesn't have to share your blood, just your table." I smiled. Not because I was being celebrated, but because I finally understood what it meant to be welcomed. Not just invited, truly welcomed. That night, I sat at my desk and opened a new document on my laptop. At the top, I wrote rules for my table. I wasn't talking about dinner. I meant the one inside me, the one where I decided who got to stay, who had to wait outside, and what it meant to belong. I didn't finish the list that night, but I knew what the first rule would be, and it wasn't about them. It was about me. I woke up the next morning feeling lighter than I had in years. The air in my apartment was still almost gentle, and for once my mind wasn't racing ahead to what the family needed next. I went about my day as usual, watering my little row of plants by the window, tidying the kitchen, brewing coffee. I spent a few quiet minutes staring out at the early spring sky, letting the peacefulness settle in. Later, as I sat at my desk, a familiar notification popped up, an email from Vanessa. I let it sit in my inbox unread for a long time before finally clicking. Her words came through tight and clipped, full of frustration and accusation. There were no apologies, just blame. She demanded to know why the emergency fund was gone, why I had made things difficult for everyone. I read it once, then closed it without replying. Instead, I opened up the email with my family and quietly began gathering everything they'd overlooked for years. I found every digital receipt and confirmation, the proof of what I'd paid for Dad's birthday dinner, the deposit, the flowers, Dad's custom print, the car service for Mom. I attached them to a new email. My message was short and plain. Since there's confusion about my intentions, here are the receipts. Everything was handled on my card. No one offered to reimburse me. I did it because I was told the dinner was about honoring Dad. But I was also told quite clearly that I wasn't considered part of the family that night. I won't be covering the remaining $4.912. I didn't eat. I wasn't seated. I wasn't welcome. And frankly, I'm tired of paying for rooms that won't even offer me a chair. I sent it to the family group blind, copying everyone. The reply came quickly this time. Jenna, my cousin, who had stayed silent at dinner, wrote first. Good for you. We saw what happened. It was cruel. Uncle Leo followed with wish. I'd had the guts to speak up. I'm sorry. Even Aunt Karen, who rarely offered more than a polite smile, wrote, About time someone said it. Then nothing from Mom. Nothing from Dad. Just silence from the people whose voices would have mattered most. A little while later, a text came through from a number I didn't recognize. Hi, this is Madison's friend Claire. We met once at a wedding. I just wanted to say your email is making the rounds. People are talking, and they're not on Vanessa's side this time. I sat there quietly looking at that message. All the years I'd spent trying to smooth things over, making excuses for other people, it had led here. Only this time, the tide wasn't moving against me. I didn't need to chase it. After lunch, I opened my banking app and scrolled to the shared family emergency fund. I'd quietly kept going for years. Nearly $30,000 had come and gone through that account. Vanessa's car repairs, Dad's dental work, Mom's bridge loan moments. It had always been me covering those things without thanks or even a proper ask. I took a deep breath, transferred the remaining balance into my own account, and closed the fund with a single click. Almost instantly, my phone rang. Vanessa's number lit up my screen again and again. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Emily. What the hell? Her voice was sharp, nearly shaking. The joint fund is gone, I said calmly. I just tried to pay my car note and it bounced. You can't just, I can. And I did. I replied. Silence hung for a few beats. Then she said, You're being vindictive. No, I'm being done, I told her. My voice didn't waver. I paid for dinner, flowers, transportation. I sat alone, got laughed at, and was still expected to pay the bill while being told I wasn't even family. That account was the last tie. Now it's gone. She went quiet for a while. You've never talked to me like this before, she finally said, voice softer now, more bewildered than angry. I took a slow breath. That's because I used to think I had to earn love by staying quiet. But love that only exists when I'm convenient isn't love at all. I hung up before she could answer, feeling steady in a way I hadn't expected. Later that night, I sat in bed with my phone in hand and opened my notes app. I began making a list of all the things I was finished doing, covering last-minute bills, driving hours for holidays where no one noticed if I was there, sending gifts that never got a thank you, pretending that silence didn't hurt. The list grew longer than I thought it would, but as it did, I felt something give way inside me. The guilt was gone. Before I fell asleep, a message came from Madison. You okay? Vanessa's spiraling, accusing everyone of siding against her. I smiled at the screen and typed, Let her spiral. I'm not her axis anymore. The room was quiet as I put my phone aside. I turned off the light, lay back on my pillow, and let the stillness settle over me. The next morning, the world felt softer, more open. I wasn't sure what would come next, but I knew the balance had shifted, and this time it was in my favor. The days after closing the family fund and sending my email brought a strange kind of quiet. I kept expecting the phone to ring or for someone to knock at my door demanding that I undo what I'd done. But the world just kept turning. I went to work, I grocery shopped, I took walks in the park as the trees finally leafed out in full. When my phone did buzz, it was never from Vanessa, not at first. Instead, the silence felt like a relief, as if the air in my apartment was somehow lighter, easier to breathe. That Friday I made dinner for myself and ate it at the small kitchen table, sunlight slanting across the floor. The stillness of the apartment made everything feel more real. Later that night, as I washed the dishes, I saw a new message. It was from Madison. Vanessa's calling everyone Emily. She's telling anyone who will listen that you've turned the whole family against her. She even called me twice like I had anything to do with it. I set the phone down and stared out the window. The kitchen was quiet, except for the hum of the fridge. I remembered what I'd said to Madison, let her spiral. I wasn't her axis anymore. That simple truth felt as solid as the chair beneath me. The next day, my phone finally rang with Vanessa's name lighting up the screen. I let it go to voicemail. She tried again and then again. On the fourth attempt, I picked up feeling steady. Her voice was tight, almost brittle. "I can't believe you did this. I just tried to pay my car insurance and it bounced. That was supposed to be for family emergencies." I listened calm. "I told you, Vanessa. The account is closed. I took care of everything for the birthday dinner and sat alone by the trash can. You made it clear I wasn't family that night. That fund was the last thing tying me to all of this." She didn't yell. In fact, she was quieter than I'd ever heard her. "You've never talked like this before." I waited. She tried again. "You're really going to leave us like this? Just walk away." I let the silence settle between us. "I'm not leaving," I said quietly. "I'm just done carrying what isn't mine." She hung up. I didn't feel angry. I felt empty, but not in a bad way, just cleared out, as if there was finally space for something new. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail, an actual handwritten letter addressed in my mother's careful script. I opened it at the kitchen table. Inside, she'd written only a few lines. She said she'd read my email over and over. She hadn't realized how much I'd given up, how long I'd gone unheard. She ended with, "If you never want to come back, I understand. But if you ever do, I promise not to seat you by the trash." There was no excuse, no asking me to fix things. Just that. I set the letter aside and poured a cup of tea. The apartment felt different. Not lonely, not even bittersweet, just peaceful. I kept thinking about the rules I'd written for my own table and what it might mean to finally follow them. That weekend, I bought myself a bouquet at the grocery store. I set it in the middle of my own table. On Sunday, I took a walk in the park, watching families gather for picnics under the new green trees. No one called me. No one asked for anything. The world didn't end. Sunday evening, I got an email from Dad. It was short, almost awkward, but real. I didn't see it. "I'm sorry. No requests. No explanations, no expectation for me to answer right away." I read it twice and closed my laptop. That night I slept deeply dreamless and warm beneath my own blanket. I woke up knowing in a way I hadn't before that my life wasn't orbiting someone else's needs anymore. It felt like standing in a quiet house after a storm has passed, everything brighter, everything still. The days that followed unfolded gently. I cooked for myself, I called friends, and made plans that didn't revolve around anyone else's schedule. I picked up a book I'd been meaning to read, and finished it in 2 afternoons. When I thought about my family, it was with a kind of softness I hadn't known I was capable of, an acceptance that things had changed, and maybe that was all right. One evening, as the sun set through the kitchen window, I found myself writing again. A list of things I'd stopped doing, a list of things I'd like to do now. Each small step forward felt like a quiet promise to myself. I had never built my life around anyone else before, not really. And now I was learning how. By the end of the week, the group chat was silent. Vanessa had stopped calling. My parents let the days pass without checking in. For the first time, the quiet felt hopeful, not hollow. And I realized that letting go wasn't an ending after all. It was a beginning. A few days after Dad's letter and Mom's quiet note, I began to notice something I hadn't expected. The silence from my family wasn't just emptiness anymore. It was the absence of constant requests, the hush after years of needing to prove myself. There were no more calls asking for favors or texts reminding me of some obligation I'd forgotten. For the first time in my adult life, my days belonged to me. I found myself sleeping and a little longer, waking up without dread for what the day would bring. I took slow mornings reading the paper at my own pace and cooked meals that I wanted, not just what was quick or easy. My friends started inviting me to dinners again, and I said yes, knowing that every invitation came without strings attached. I went to a neighborhood potluck and brought lemon bars, and for once nobody expected me to clean up after everyone. That weekend, I hosted a small dinner in my apartment. Just 6 people, all friends I'd chosen myself. No cousins, no siblings, no old family habits to navigate. I roasted chicken with rosemary and set the table with mismatched napkins and thrifted glasses. We sat together for hours sharing food stories and laughter that rose warm and genuine into the night. There was no seating chart, no one left out, nobody expected to sit by the trash can. My friend Talia raised her glass partway through and said, "To Emily, here's to building your own table." The toast made me smile, not because it was grand, but because it was honest. That night, after everyone left, I walked around my little apartment collecting plates, feeling a calm settle over me. I thought about all those years of stepping in, paying deposits, running errands, being the dependable one who filled in every gap. I realized quietly that I hadn't missed the role as much as I thought I would. On Monday morning, a thick white envelope showed up in my mailbox, no return address, but my mother's handwriting across the front, inside a simple card and a short note. She wrote that she'd reread my email again and again and finally understood just how much I'd given up to keep the family together. She apologized for the ways I'd been left out. She didn't offer excuses, and she didn't ask me to fix anything. She ended the letter. "If you never want to come back, I understand. But if you ever do, I promise you won't be seated by the trash." I set the card in the top drawer of my desk, not out of anger or sadness, but because I knew I didn't need to answer right away. For the first time, an apology from my family had arrived with no conditions, no expectations. I poured a cup of tea and sat at my kitchen table, letting that truth settle in. That week, I saw the family group chat come alive with messages again, but this time the tone had shifted. Jenna posted a photo from the birthday dinner one I hadn't seen before. The table was shining with crystal and candles, everyone smiling for the camera. But in the far corner, blurred but visible, was me still in my coat by the trash can. I looked at the picture for a long moment. It didn't sting anymore. It was just proof of where I'd been and why I'd left. I spent that evening working on the document I'd started a week earlier, a list of new rules for my own table. The first line read, "No one who makes you feel invisible eats first." I added, "Love that comes with conditions isn't love at all, and silence is not grace when it costs you your dignity." Each rule felt more true than the last. As the sun set, I realized the balance had shifted, not just for me, but for everyone who'd quietly watched from the sidelines. My cousins and aunts who had stayed silent before were now sending quiet messages of support. Some admitted they'd wanted to speak up that night, but hadn't found the words. Others simply said, "About time." By the weekend, I was planning another dinner. This one wasn't to prove anything or win approval. It was just to enjoy the people who made me feel seen. When the guests arrived, the apartment was filled with the scent of roasted vegetables and warm bread. We gathered, we toasted, and nobody sat on the sidelines. For the first time, I realized that justice didn't always look like a grand apology or a dramatic showdown. Sometimes it was just the steady return of your own peace, the moment when your absence makes others reconsider their actions, and your presence is finally a choice, not an obligation. The old debt was paid. I had done what was needed to set things right, and I could finally breathe. In the quiet that followed my second dinner with friends, I realized something had settled inside me, something that had been missing for a long time. There was no more frantic energy, no more weight of waiting for someone else to see me. The air in my apartment felt easy. The last guests had left their laughter and the scent of warm bread lingering in every corner. I stood at my own table collecting plates, looking at the candle wax pooled in a saucer, and thought about the girl I used to be. The one who believed her worth was measured by how much she could give and how quietly she could fade into the background. A few days later, as I tidied my desk, I found the handwritten note from Mom again. I didn't reread it. I just tucked it into the drawer with my journal and shut it softly. I had already heard what I needed to hear. This time her words came with no expectations, no strings attached, and that was enough. Dad's apology sat with me, too. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And for the first time in my life, he hadn't asked me to make things right. He'd simply acknowledged what had been lost. As spring came on stronger, I made it a habit to sit by my window in the mornings, watching the light move across the buildings, and feeling grateful for the quiet. I realized I'd built something for myself that nobody could take away a sense of home that had nothing to do with who showed up or who didn't. When I looked back at the photo from Dad's birthday dinner, the one where I was just a blurred shape by the trash can, it didn't sting anymore. It was just a memory, a marker of how far I'd come. I kept adding to the list I'd started in Santa Fe. Little things, small promises to myself. Choosing people who made me feel welcome. Speaking up even when my voice shook, saying no when I needed to, letting the silence be a comfort, not a punishment. With each new promise, the distance between who I'd been and who I was now grew a little wider, a little more certain. In time, the calls from my family grew less frequent. There was no great reconciliation, no sudden return to old habits, but there was respect, a recognition that I was no longer someone to lean on without gratitude or thought. And I knew now that justice didn't always arrive with a grand gesture or a dramatic confrontation. Sometimes it was as simple as reclaiming your own seat, building your own table, and making the rules for your own heart. If you're listening and you've ever felt unseen, I hope you know it's never too late to draw your own boundaries, to ask for more, to walk away from a table that doesn't offer you a place. The cost of staying silent is too high. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply choosing yourself. Thank you for hearing my story. If it touched something in you, I hope you'll share it or leave a comment below. Maybe tell me about a time you found your own voice. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, I hope you'll join me again. Until next time, take care of your heart, and remember, you always have a seat at your own table.